So, are we working here? Is this... It really is amazing how every single time I try to live stream something, there is a technical difficulty, either with the connection, or with the equipment, or with the settings, or something like that. So, hopefully, I have corrected a few things here, and we can start talking about Diehard Gamefan. Now, I had mentioned last night, before I got into the stream, that, you know, Diehard Gamefan was not a magazine that I purchased a lot of back in the 90s when I was really buying video game magazines. It seemed to be on the periphery. It was there occasionally on the newsstands, but I don't remember it kind of having the reach and the significance within my circle of friends as things like GamePro, Nintendo Power, and Electronic Gaming Monthly. So when I did my EGM video, someone said, oh, well, why don't you do Gamefan? Because Gamefan really had the best layouts. And yeah, so I found a couple cheap Gamefans floating around the internet. I figured we'd give this one a try. This is Volume 2, Issue 8, and it chronicles the release of Super Street Fighter 2 on the SNES and Genesis. Now, this was a magazine that would have really interested me back in the day, because I was very much invested into the release of Super Street Fighter 2. So, assuming that the audio is intact, I try to include some music in this test stream. The first one I did was just sort of me rambling on, so I threw some classic game music on. Hopefully that is okay. Hopefully the levels are okay. And if the webcam holds out, we can get through Diehard Gamefan. So let's open it up, and off the bat here, I have an advertisement for Eternal Champions, Subterranea, and Gunstar Heroes. Gunstar Heroes, best of the bunch, I would say. Some editorials. Breath of Fire. Breath of Fire is a game that I was always interested in playing and never have. But I remember this advertisement. Not really sure if the whole comic book thing worked. Probably would have wanted to see some screenshots. Now we have Streets of Rage 3, and Streets of Rage 3 is a game that I still have never played. I was such a fan of Streets of Rage 1 and 2, and I wanted to get 3, but never got around to it, and I still haven't even played a stream of it. I would really like to get a hold of the physical copy, but of course that is quite expensive these days. Adam's Family Values advertisement kind of looks like a top view RPG. Kind of interesting. King of the Monsters. A lot of ads here at the beginning. We're not really seeing a lot of content, but of course here we have the Sega Saturn. The Jaguar ad, 64-bit, do the math. Of course we knew how that math really worked out, but yeah, you know, it's funny, as I look at this ad, I really was hopeful for the Jaguar. I thought it sounded kind of cool, but none of these sort of initial wave launch titles, you know, really did it for me, really kind of caught my eye. So yeah, let's see if we can't zoom in a little bit on the magazine, give you guys a better shot here. Hopefully we have this little shadow off to the side, but no glare. You know, we had some glare issues last time we did this. So, alright, have some codes. One of the things I found interesting was this Dracula X level select code. This is something that I really want to try. I'm going to fire up the ROM of that later on, because as much as I liked Dracula X, I thought it was really difficult, and I don't really have time to kind of struggle through the whole game these days, but a level select code would be Much appreciated. There's Super Street Fighter 2 advertisement. Some more codes. Mega Turrican Level Skip. You know, Mega Turrican is another game that, I mean, has a great soundtrack on the Genesis. Maybe one of the best Genesis soundtracks. But again, very difficult. And of course, I remember getting Turrican on the TurboGrafx, and that was just brutal. So, those codes are kind of interesting. Let's see what we have here. Vivid 3D. So this is kind of interesting. It looks like an external sound card for console games. Which, of course, made sense back in the day because if you remember in the olden days, you just had your television. Not everyone had a receiver or a sound system. I remember if my parents weren't home, they had a stereo, and I could hook it up to that, but that was like once in a blue moon. So kind of an interesting product. Sound card. Some comic books here, or some comics. Let's get to some content. Alright, so Viewpoints, and this looks like a little review section. What are they getting at here? So they have the scores of Super Street Fighter 2. This is for the Genesis. Let's see, someone gives it a 92. Let's read the absolute highest score that it got. The reviewer says here, finally, another Street Fighter 2 game for the Genesis. Even though I love the game, hey, it's Street Fighter 2, guys. I'm wondering whether where the 40 megs are hiding. The graphics and control are perfect, but what's up with the sound? And that's something that all three reviewers pointed out. The previous Sega version had better sound, and it was only 24 megs. Super is good, but the sound still needs work. The Genesis can produce these samples perfectly with a lot less memory. Why sound has been overlooked here, or overlooked twice, remains a mystery. So sound. I mean, it never sounded as good as the SNES versions, but certainly when I picked that game up, I wasn't really thinking about the sound. Now you have Outrunners down here, and I was trying to think. There was like an Outrun-style game on the Genesis that was awful. I don't know if it was Outrunners or like Outrun 2019 or something like that, or 2020 that was bad. Rebel Assault, Sega CD. That was a game I never picked up. Average scores. And then Clay Fighter. Now, Clay Fighter is interesting. I remember being completely blown away by the graphics on Clay Fighter as a kid. And you know what? I actually remember saying, oh, if only I could buy stock in Interplay. They're going to be rolling in the dough. And of course, funny how the logic of a preteen works there. But looking back on that game, I thought it was average, and I could see why I had a fair degree of fun with it. But I only ever rented it. Stone Protectors. Yeah, I think they have a write-up on a UK developer with whom I'm not familiar, but they did Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, Lodestar, kind of these FMV games on the Sega CD, and that never really did it for me, the FMV games. But actually, it's funny because when I saw this, it reminded me of something I read not too long ago, that Quantum Break on the Xbox One is apparently going to somehow be connected to a TV show, and so you'll sort of play a section, and then it will be interspersed. The gameplay will be, interspersed with some episode of a show, and that to me is quite a turnoff. Kind of, coming from this era where the FMV games, despite the hype, were actually pretty terrible. I don't know that I can ever, willingly go into a game knowing that I will have to, sit through these cinemas. Of course, today it will look a lot better. So we're still trying to get to the meat and potatoes of this issue of Gamefan, and here we go. Here's Sega Section Super Street Fighter 2, and already you can see kind of the nice layout here. This is a lot nicer looking than the layouts you saw on EGM and GamePro. And this was a game for which I didn't really need an incredible layout. Super Street Fighter 2 was one of my most hyped games growing up. I got Champions Edition the year before, and remember this game coming out in the arcades and never quite being able to get onto the machine because it was just so popular, and I was a little bit younger and kind of lacked the skill to compete with the big-time players. So yeah, when I got it home, it was quite the revelation to be able to play this game, even though, it's still Street Fighter. It wasn't leaps and bounds above Champions Edition, but yeah, just looking at this layout here really does take me back, and you can kind of see the artistry that Gamefan puts into these layouts. So yeah, I will definitely give them that. EGM, my choice as a kid, didn't do the art and the screenshots quite this well, so this would have added to my hype for the game. We have here, this is, turn this around, looks like a couple screenshots for Dynamite Heady, which, if I recall, Dynamite Heady was a treasure game. Could be wrong about that, but it's one of those platformers on the Genesis that I never really played. I don't even think I rented this one. So, but a cool layout. That's again another game that I would like to explore, and that's a nice thing about looking at retro video game magazines now, is that whereas when you were a kid, for most games, in most cases, all you had to go on was the magazine. But now you can actually hunt these games down, and either in ROM form or on eBay. So I think there should be really a renaissance of these retro gaming mags, because now you can really experience all of the games in them and kind of go and play and see what see if you agree with the write-ups here. So this one, Flint, and the Memory of the Enchanted Island. I do not remember this game at all. So this is the whole Genesis section. Oh yeah, what was this? 3D... what was this game here? 3D fighting... Balls. Okay, now this was a rental, and it was funny. I always wanted to find games on the Genesis that I was like, oh well, hey, SNES fanboys with your great Donkey Kong Country, Balls is so much better. Look at the 3D, and of course, an absolutely absurd comparison. But yeah, this was one of the games that I rented, and I rented it a weekend that one of my SNES owning buddies came over, and I was like, we're going to have our minds blown, check this out. And really obviously didn't do it, but I don't remember it being terrible. I don't remember it being a terrible game. It just, I don't know if, we have one viewer here, so welcome. I don't know if you're familiar with Balls on the Genesis, but I don't remember it being horrible. Ooh, Contra Hardcore. Another game that I've only played in ROM form, and boy is it absolutely brutal. Okay. So I guess addressing the audience there, asking a question, and the person leaves. Understandable. I don't know how the audio quality is here. Hopefully it's okay. But yeah, really nice layouts. Contra Hardcore. Bubba and Sticks. Another... that's a game I've honestly never heard of. I'm sort of looking at it here, and almost looks like a European game. It has that Asterix and Obelix kind of graphical styling to it. Rebel Assault on the Sega CD. Now, because of my my kind of hate of FMV games, I never picked this up. But you know, actually, it doesn't look terrible. This might be an interesting one to play if you could find it for a cheap price. Now we have a working design of this game. Oh, this is Vay. Am I saying that right? Vay. Yeah. Beautiful layout here. Vay was never a rental for me. I only ever rented Lunar and played through a good bit of that. But, you know, it's funny, in my SNES versus Genesis video, I kind of lamented the fact that the Sega/Sega CD didn't have the quality of RPGs that the SNES had. Yet, I never really played Vay. Never played Popful Mail back in the day, although I guess that's not really your standard RPG. But yeah, I mean, this looks cool. This looks like a game I would have had some hype for. But very nicely done. I can see why people are high on this magazine. Now, you gotta ask yourself, does Boogerman deserve this kind of a layout? And you know, it was funny. I was going through my Genesis collection, and I found an old copy of Tommy Lasorda Baseball, and I opened it up, and it was covered in Boogerman stickers. So at some point in my life, Boogerman appealed to me for some reason. So interesting. Ooh, and a special report on the 32X. This 94 lineup. 32X is a true 32-bit system that snaps onto and works with Genesis and Sega CD. It only costs $150. So, not really a hint of criticism here. I don't know. When I read up on the 32X, I have to say that I kind of thought it was bullshit right off the bat. You know, I felt burned by the Sega CD because it really, you know, it really didn't compete with the SNES as far as I was concerned. And really the only games that I really liked were Lunar, Sonic CD, and, well, I played a lot of that WWF Steelcade something or other, but that was a crappy game. And Final Fight CD, which I love. So, you know, that was it for me. When I saw the 32X, I just was like, it's over for Sega. Shining Force 2. Boy, did I play a lot of the original Shining Force. And I don't actually have Shining Force 2. That's a game I have to get, because I did rent Shining Force 2 a lot back in the day, and Shining Force 1, and that was kind of my RPG of choice on the Genesis. But just gorgeous graphics. I love everything about the Shining Force series on the Genesis. Operation Europe, familiar with that. There's a Lunar again. Daytona USA, Sega at the Arcade. And they even mentioned the Saturn there. This was a big game for me, Daytona USA. I did a whole kind of a video essay on it. I think this past spring or summer, and boy, playing this game in the arcade was a treat. It wasn't something that I was able to do that frequently, but yeah, really, you know, when I did, it really felt like the future And even seeing it on the Saturn, although the Saturn was a little disappointing, it actually, years later going back to it, as I said in that piece, it's actually a very good Saturn game too, if you can get over the choppy frame rate and kind of pixelated look. But I love Daytona USA. What game is this? Familiar. E-Storm? Something like that? Never heard of that game. Oh, this is just a roundup here. Preview of some Sega games. Let's... Shining Force CD. Now, this is interesting. I did not... play Shining Force? I may have played Shining Force CD as well. Well, that's another one I'd love to have, but it's probably a couple $100 these days. Alright, now we're into the SNES section. So this is pretty cool how they break it up by system. Boy, another great layout here. Detailing all of the new characters, some of their moves. Not actually telling you how to perform the moves, but yeah, just a really, really nice layout. Electricity, rolling attack. This is cool. This is actually cooler than the Genesis layout, honestly. But you know, I never played Super on the SNES. I only know, of course, the arcade version and the Genesis, and of course the Japanese Street Fighter Collection probably has the best console version of it, which and some sort of like DX tournament edition. I guess it was only released in Japan, but yeah, this was really, really cool. What do we have here? Brain Lord. This is an Enix game? Yeah, Enix. Action RPG. Do not remember this one too well. It looks pretty cool. You know, this is something that I'd like to find a ROM for. Because, of course, you know, we've all played Dragon Quest and stuff like that, but I do not remember Brain Lord, although I believe it's fairly expensive if you were to buy it. I have here Ren and Stimpy. I remember renting this and hating it. Demon's Crest. Okay, so this was like the Gargoyle Quest game on the Game Boy. It's in the Super NES version. Never played this one, but, you know, I don't know. I was never a fan of the whole Ghouls and Ghosts series. I mean, it's fun to a degree, but it never really did it for me. Clay Fighter, Return of the Jedi, which, you know, people are right. Those are friggin' difficult games. And I think I rented one of them. I think I rented Super Star Wars, and that game pretty much kicked my ass. So I didn't rent any of the other ones, and now just play them in ROM form. Of course, we have Clay Fighter, which looked a lot better on the SNES. I will admit that, but you know, as a Genesis fan, I was quite committed to renting and mastering Clay Fighter on my system. Unfortunately, the SNES definitely had it beat. Samurai Spirits on the SNES. You know, it was funny. I actually got the Genesis version. I saw it just sort of sitting around in a discount pile at a retro game store. So I got it for about $10, and you know, it wasn't terrible. Sound was awful. I don't know how the SNES version fared. Probably better, but it was funny because, you know, to play a Neo Geo game on your console felt like a big deal. Because, I mean, let's face it, you weren't getting a Neo Geo back in the day, or at least I wasn't. So to kind of play Samurai Spirits on my Genesis and, you know, replicate the experience to a degree, that was enough for me. Indiana Jones, Superman, Death and Return of Superman. Do not really remember this game, although I remember being fairly invested in the comic storyline. I remember buying the Death issue. I didn't have the Death issue in the sort of the black plastic. I got some sort of bound issue of that. And then when the Return of Superman issue came up in like the white plastic, and we're buying a couple of those thinking they would be worth something. Of course they are completely worthless. But that was a big thing. Like that actually made the mainstream news. I was like, oh, cool, comics in the news. But never played the game. So Blackthorn. I remember Blackthorn, incidentally, because the Sega CD version, they were touting, oh, his coat sort of flutters in the wind. And that was like the big selling point in a Sega Vision's write-up on it. Whatever. So here we have Breath of Fire, and Capcom RPG, I believe, although published by Square. And, this was a big regret that I never got into this series. Something that I'd like to do if I had time, at least in ROM form, is to at least play the original Breath of Fire. Of course, I think they released the sequels on... I think there were two other ones on the SNES, and then Breath of Fire 4 on the PlayStation. Not sure whatever happened to the series after that. Power Rangers. Don't really have an opinion about Power Rangers. That to me was kids stuff. So I was already getting a little bit older, and the Power Ranger thing didn't appeal to me. Fatal Fury Special. Okay. By Takara. Interesting. I didn't realize that came out on the SNES. Pitfall requires... what else do we have here? Sunsoft Japan. Albert Odyssey. Boy, a great game for the Saturn. Oh, we got Earthbound. 24 meg RPG is said to have an even better storyline than Final Fantasy III. That seems hard to believe. It sure doesn't have new graphics. We'll give you the scoop on Mother 2 in an upcoming review. Now, that's pretty cool. First mention of Earthbound. What else do we have here? Jurassic Park, Road Rash on the 3DO. Now, I remember seeing that in the stores and saying, oh man, the 3DO looks awesome. I mean, that was one of the calling card games. I think it had a fairly memorable soundtrack, but yeah, I wasn't getting the $700 3DO either. Atlas World, Powers Kingdom. It was an import. I have to admit, the 3DO, aside from Road Rash, and I think they had Super Street Fighter 2, aside from those games, nothing else appealed to me on that console, and I'm not sure that, I'm not sure that I've ever found another game that I wanted to play on it. Although I remember being thrilled by the technology, because it could play... video discs, it could... I even think it had some sort of they were trying to do some sort of internet connection, or, online commerce. Oh, hey Chris, how are you? Yeah, this is a cool issue, I have to say. Just got a lot of these, and I didn't know, what was going to be in them, so it was nice. Boy, they really gave this... 3DO RPG, interesting write-up. Dr. Hauser. Hey Chris, how are you? Dr. Hauser. Gosh, that looks terrible. Man. That looks terrible from the screenshots. But, you had to push the 3DO at this time. The 3DO was... it was a big deal, just for what it stood for. What is this here? World of the Warrior demo? and some sort of off-road game. And we have a, oh, it's interesting, Mortal Kombat 2 comparison. I had it for the Genesis and for the Game Gear. Yeah, this is a jam-packed issue. Really good. Like I said, I don't exactly know why I didn't gravitate more to this, only because I don't think it was really available widely, at least where I bought magazines. So I feel kind of bad that I only had one or two of these, which I can't find, as it were. Sega Sports. What else do we have here? F1 World Championships. What system was this for? Oh, computer. God, early computer racing games. How far they've come. I was just playing last week, playing Assetto Corsa with the G27 racing wheel, and being, you know, blown away by how great that game looks and feels. And then you see, you know, the origins of PC racing. Pretty cool. MLBPA Baseball. EA Sports early baseball title. Let's see here if I can see the channel a little bit better. This fighting game music. Yeah, you know, I don't know. I obviously have my computer on mute. I don't know what is being played right now. But I did include in this playlist the CPS2 versions of the Street Fighter soundtrack that was put out by Brave Wave or Brainwave, something like that. And it was like $20. I saw it online, and they'd give you a download of it as well. And really, really sounds good. So if that's what you're listening to, I'm glad that has come up, because I put the playlist on shuffle. Oh, Final Fight. I hope it's the Final Fight CD soundtrack. Sega CD soundtrack. That was awesome. Alright. Yeah, sports games do look better on paper. I had Mario Andretti. God, that game was rough. FIFA Soccer. Now, I remember really liking that game. I used to do this thing with a friend of mine. He was really good at it, and I would pick either Italy or Brazil, and he would pick Qatar. And you know, he'd try to beat me with Qatar or Qatar, and he did sometimes. He was a really good player. Yeah, a lot of sports here at the end. Super Sidekicks. Is this? Oh, that was SNK. Okay. I don't really recall playing a lot of SNK sports games. Super Baseball 2020. Now that I played in the arcade. That was an iconic arcade game, I think. FIFA 98 was great on the PS1. I think I played FIFA 98. I think I played FIFA 2000. I was in Germany for a summer, and this buddy of mine I was staying with had it, and we played the hell out of that game. I bought it when I got back to the States. Jungle Book. Ultimate Fighter. You know, it's funny. It's amazing how many fighters tried to, you know, get on the Street Fighter bandwagon. And I've always wanted to maybe do a video, you know, where I played these, you know, third-rate fighting games, but never gotten around to actually buying them. What is this? Quarter Crunchers. Top Hunter. I have no recollection of these games. Karnoff's Revenge. I could have sworn that Karnoff was a NES game, or an NES... I don't know if it was an RPG or a side-scrolling action game. Interesting. Special K's Japan Now. So I know a lot of people like Gamefan, because they were the best with, with covering what was going on in Japan. And, I think EGM did a fair job with that as well. I don't think, I don't think Gamefan is head and shoulders above the rest. I mean, they are the best, but nonetheless, we have here the NEC, what was that, PC FX, which Karnoff was on Neo Geo CD and the NES. Okay, was it a fighting game on the NES, or was it a side-scrolling beat 'em up? Virtua Fighter 30% complete version. God, I do remember the PC. I remember them EGM talking about the PCFX, and I thought it would be so cool. I was like, my God, it's a PC tower. Think of all the power that it will have. But boy, was that a letdown. Early shots of the PlayStation. Pretty cool. I guess these were the launch titles. Japan-only launch titles for the Saturn. A lot of people like Shinobi EX. So. Oh, it was a platformer. Okay. Yeah, I think that Karnoff on the NES might have been a rental for me at one point. Europa. What do we have here? Lemmings. I don't know. And Chris, I think you're from the UK, so don't take this the wrong way, but as a kid, I remember reading and thinking to myself, a lot of the European-developed games were not very good for the Genesis and the SNES, except for Lemmings. Lemmings was really popular, it was like on every platform, and I think Ultima too, but some of the stuff that came out was not great. Yeah, I've got to look into that, Shinobi. Powerfest. Well, this was a good issue, I have to admit. This was a very good issue. What do we have in the back? I always loved the back of these magazines, because I would sort of look at what you could buy and fantasize about getting these things. Look at this, the CDX. $395, which ironically is probably what you'd pay to get one on eBay today. Sega CD, $209. Jaguar, $239. What is that? Game Gear with Sonic Sports Pack. And, these old traders, and you could see kind of the prices, what they were going for. So yeah, there it was. That is Gamefan, Volume 2, Issue 8. And seems like I was able to get through the stream without any horrendous issues. So what I think I'm going to do, probably cut it off here, unless anyone in the chat wants to, continue chatting. Yeah, I have, and I do have other magazines here, and a couple of EGMs and stuff like that. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, you saw the things for sale in the back of those magazines, but, I never ordered from them. But anyway, I think what I'll do is I'll just let YouTube kind of post this to my channel, and if there's any interest in seeing, more kind of live reads of magazines, I certainly have quite a stack. of stuff in my game room. So, Chris, as always, I appreciate it. Every time I'm actually able to stream, and I don't screw it up or my technology doesn't break down, you are always nice enough to come on and provide some good conversation. So, appreciate that. All right, guys. See you later.